Hi everyone, welcome to Rent Prep for Landlords. I'm Andrew Schultz, Community Manager here at Rent Prep. I'm also a licensed real estate broker in the state of New York with over 14 years of experience in the property management and rental property industries. On today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at the best tools that you can pick up this weekend on your trip to Home Depot for under $20. These recommendations will be especially useful for our DIY landlords as well as our newer tradies who are just trying to make their day-to-day lives a little bit easier. We really try to avoid the stuff that people typically already have in their toolboxes. We're looking for the less common stuff that you always wish you had when it counts. The stuff that always makes you think, I really wish that I had one of those, or I should really keep one of those with me. Let's go ahead and take a look at the top 10 tools that we found under $20. All right, we're starting things off today on the Home Depot website. We've got a whole bunch of items to take a look at here, so let's go ahead and dive right in. We're going to start off with this, which is a tile and flooring template tool. If you're not familiar with these are incredibly handy if you do any sort of tile and flooring work, obviously. And what it does is it helps you to figure out the exact angles that you need to cut a piece of flooring or to cut a piece of tile to so that you can fit it into an awkward space, kind of like what they're showing in the picture here. These are incredibly useful for that exact purpose, and I want to couple that with the second tool here, which is incredibly useful if you have odd angles that you're trying to figure out on a woodworking project. Again, it can be used on tile work if you're trying to figure out what angles you need for a corner cut or something of that nature. And the nice thing is you can set this to lock when you pick it up so that you can carry it to another location and make a circle on your piece of wood for what you're trying to cut out or whatever the case may be. This is an incredibly useful tool. Very, very good when you're trying to get exact angles and exact measurements, things of that nature. These two are very, very uncommon tools. Most people don't typically have them in their toolbox, but it's one of those things that once you do have it, it'll make your life a lot easier if you're ever trying to do tile work or do flooring work. The next is also going to be a twofer. We have a pair of lighted tweezers. Doesn't obviously need to be a pair of lighted tweezers, obviously. But the second tool that I want to mention to go along with this is a little set of hooks. These are incredibly useful when you drop a screw into a tight place or something like that, and you need to kind of get in there to grab it and pull it back towards you. Super, super useful for situations such as that. It does come with a couple different options here. Believe it or not, the last time I used this was actually in my vehicle to push in. I used the 90-degree hook to push in on a little bracket that I needed to get released that I couldn't get access to real well with my fingers, and it worked incredibly well for that purpose. Very, very useful tool to have in your toolbox and not something that people typically carry. And the tweezers just go right along with that as a pretty straightforward add-on item. I think it makes sense to carry a pair of tweezers right along with your set of hooks. And moving on to our next tool, this is actually a pretty common tool. We've started giving these to each one of our tenants, actually, at the time of moving. We typically leave one under the kitchen sink or the bathroom sink. I call it a rip and zip. Other people have different names for it. On the Home Depot website, it just comes up as drain cleaning tool as a 2-pack. The reason that I like this is because it's a $10.59 insurance policy, in my opinion. This is really, really good for helping someone to remove a hair clog or knock some stuff free from the bottom of a P-trap or something like that to kind of get a drain moving again. The nice thing is they're incredibly cheap, and it's a nice first resource before you send a plumber out or run any sort of a drain cleaning liquid or anything down through there. And I really like this particular one because it has the little points on it to help you grab the hair and rip it out. You can kind of see those along the yellow part of the tool here, and they really seem to work pretty well. We've had a lot of success using these over the years. Like I said, we try to give these to our tenants at the time of move-in. It's a $10.59 insurance policy, in our opinion, that has actually helped save us a lot of trips, a lot of plumber trips back and forth to properties over the course of the years. That's definitely something that's worth checking out. This one could have gone right along with our earlier tools. We had the hooks. Where are my hooks? My tweezers and my hooks. This kind of goes right along with those. You've probably seen these before. This is one of the little grab claws that you can use to grab things that you can't necessarily reach. This is incredibly useful for when you drop something behind something else or drop something into a tight space, because you can use the little clamp bit to essentially extend your reach, grab onto a small object, and pull it out from wherever it happens to be. I use these things all the time. I carry one with me. I constantly drop stuff. I constantly watch things roll under couches, under stoves, under appliances, whatever the case may be. It just makes it much, much easier to actually get to a small object and retrieve it. And actually, here's a good use case right here. If somebody drops something down the sink drain that you need to retrieve, it's much easier to retrieve it with one of these than it is to remove the trap and everything else. So definitely something that's worth keeping in your toolbox. Moving right along, this is actually a recommendation from one of our contractors. I actually called a few of our guys and said, hey, what's your favorite tool that you carry in your toolbox, your favorite uncommon tool? And this one actually came from one of our contractors, Tom, who does a lot of our general contracting work. This is a set of plush nippers for nail heads and things of that nature. It also has a little nail pull tool on the back here, and on the front side of it, it has a little hammerhead, or at least it's supposed to. And the nice thing is, with this, it makes it a lot easier if you're going through and doing a bunch of flooring work or something along that line, where you need to cut a bunch of staples, or you need to pull a bunch of staples, or you're just trying to flush cut stuff. And the reason that he specifically recommended these was because they come about as close as possible as you can get to a flush cut surface after the nail has been cut off, or whatever the case may be. So these are incredibly useful if you're doing a lot of that style of work, or you have a ton of nails that you're pulling out, something along those lines. Pretty useful tool to have in your toolbox, and not something that a lot of people will tend to carry. On to our next tool. I'm pretty sure everybody has seen a speed square before, but most people really don't have any idea how to use a speed square, which is why I put this one on your list of things to grab. My recommendation would be grab this tool and then go over to YouTube. We'll go over to YouTube ourselves here, youtube.com. And we're going to type how to use a speed square. And there are about 1 million different videos here on all of the different ways that you can use a speed square, beyond just using it as a guide for a circular saw, or beyond just using it to measure out a straight line real quick. There are a lot of things that you can do with a speed square, especially if you're a roofer. I mean, most roofers probably are very experienced on how to use speed squares, but a speed square is one of those tools that's incredibly useful to have with you in a lot of circumstances, and it'll make your life a lot easier once you know how to use it. So my recommendation is spend the $14 on the speed square, and then spend 5 minutes watching a video or two on YouTube to help you get educated on how to use it. This is one of those tools that's going to make it a lot easier for you to make your work fast and more accurate as you learn how to use it. So that's definitely one that goes on my recommendation list as well. This one's probably a little bit more common, and it does come in slightly over our $20 price point, but I'm going to let it slide because technically it is two different tools. And I'm going to say that this is specifically the one that I'm recommending. I don't really care so much about the plug-in outlet tester here. That one is not so much what I'm worried about. What I am more worried about is the non-contact voltage tester here. This is one of those testers that allows you to basically run it near electrical to find out if the electrical is active or not. This is actually the one that I carry in my toolbox specifically, and I use this one specifically because it's a dual mode. What I mean by that is it will start registering voltage starting at 12 volts, which is common in a lot of applications such as doorbells and things of that nature. If you're running low voltage wiring for security systems or something along those lines, it's nice to be able to test and see whether a low voltage line actually has voltage flowing through it. So it also has obviously the higher range of voltage testing, which is more typical of what you're going to see in your outlets, whether it be a 120, a 240, whatever the case may be. But I specifically like this dual range model because it does indicate to you when you have low voltage on a line and not just regular household current. Again, it is a little bit over the $20 price point, but it is two separate tools, so I'm going to go ahead and let that slide. This is one of those things that if you're not carrying it in your toolbox, you're going to ask yourself, why have I not been carrying this the first time that you don't have to run and find the breaker or whatever the case may be. So definitely something to keep in your toolbox. On to the next one, and I'm sure that I've recommended this about 1 million times in the past, but if you're doing any sort of work where you need to have both of your hands free, and you also need to have light wherever you're working, having a headlamp is probably about the best possible tool that you can have in your toolbox. I recommend nothing less than 500 lumens for any sort of a headlamp or a flashlight. As a matter of fact, the flashlight that I carry with me on a daily basis, this one is a Streamlight version, and it is incredibly bright. That comes in at about 1200 lumens, actually. But I enjoy having a bright flashlight with me wherever I go. I carry that flashlight with me every single day, but I do have a couple of different headlamps that I carry in my toolbox because sometimes you need to have your hands free while you're doing work. So my recommendation would be some sort of a headlamp, battery operated or USB rechargeable, whatever the case may be. Just make sure that it's bright enough to actually be able to illuminate the area that you're working on. And again, I would recommend no less than 500 lumens on something like that. We got another twofer here. We've got a couple different clamps, and honestly, you can never have enough clamps. I understand that it's not necessarily something that you're going to want to carry in your toolbox all the time, depending on what you're doing, but having a couple different types of clamps just makes life a little bit easier when you're trying to get a job done for whatever reason. I carry a couple of these bigger 3-inch clamps, and then we also have some of these bar clamps as well. There's about a million different styles of these things out there, and they range in price anywhere from a few bucks up to several $100s, depending on what type of clamp you're buying and what you need it to do and how large and things of that nature. But having extra clamps is never a bad thing. The number of times that I've needed to keep something attached to something else while I'm trying to fasten it with, nuts, bolts, screws, whatever the case may be, it's totally worth it to have a couple of clamps with you at any given time. It's going to make your life a lot easier in a lot more ways than you realize, rather than just trying to fumble around and keep everything together with your hands while you're trying to work a screwdriver or a drill or whatever the case may be. This is probably one of my favorite things that I carry around with me for showings and things of that nature. It's not necessarily a tool that you're going to be grabbing all the time, but it is something that once you've experienced having a roll of these with you, you're never going to want to go back to not having a roll of these with you. These are Velcro brand reusable zip ties. Not reusable zip ties, reusable cable ties, or whatever you want to call them. And essentially, it's just a reusable Velcro tie. We use these all the time in vacant apartments to wrap up cable cords and things of that nature, just to make things look a little bit neater. They're great for cable management behind desks and things of that nature. We use these things all over the place. And the nice thing is, this is a 50 pack. You can get larger packages of them. I think I bought a pack on Amazon of like 250 of them or something of that nature for probably right around the same price as what they have them on Home Depot's website. But just having a roll of these in your toolbox makes it so much easier to wrap up a cord or help keep things neat and tidy on your job sites, or as you're getting ready to put an apartment on the market. Wrapping up a cord so it's not sitting all over the floor just makes things look a little bit neater in your marketing photos. So again, this is one of those recommendations that I would certainly say for this price point, for $6.27, very, very easy thing to pick up, keep in your toolbox, and then you always have it when you need it. Last but not least, this is something that I picked up recently, and it has already paid for itself. It's a set of security bits. And I don't know if you do a lot of work where you are opening things up, trying to get inside to change batteries on electronic deadbolts and things of that nature. Ring doorbells use these style of bits. Let me see if I can get a larger picture here. There we go. There's a whole different variety of these things in here. And the nice thing is they work really, really well. They're pretty durable for being a cheaper set of bits. They're not something that you use all the time, obviously, but when you need to open something and it has a security bit on it, having a set of security bit tools with you is going to make that job go a lot smoother than if you have to sit and drill out a screw because you don't have the bit to open it, or if you have to run somewhere to get the bit to open it. This is one of those things that's made a large, large difference in my toolbox. I'm glad to have this. It also does come with, I believe, a couple of Phillips heads in here as well, maybe. No, I guess that's a specialty bit too. But there are a lot of different little specialty bits and stuff in here. And it comes with a drill chuck, by the way, which is kind of convenient. So definitely a worthwhile investment for $14. This is one of those things that I would absolutely consider adding to my toolbox to make life a little bit easier. So there you have it. A quick trip down the tool aisle always makes for a happy landlord or handyman. Are you carrying any of the tools that we mentioned already, or is there something that you carry that we missed on our list? Drop us a comment down below and let us know what you carry in your toolbox. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll be back in a couple weeks with an all-new episode that you won't want to miss. Until then, I'm Andrew Schultz with RentPrep.com, and I'll talk to you soon.